So just want to welcome you all here. This is an important step in the life of the school, and we want to make sure that we talk about this well, and that there's good information, and we just appreciate you being here and showing this a good interest in your children's education. So I want to welcome you here, and I'd like to open with a word of prayer. God of grace, God of glory, we thank you for this day, a gift from you, a gift to celebrate the life that you've given to us, a day to celebrate learning, and a day to gather to discuss important things about this school. And we pray, Lord, that you will bless our time here together, bless us with clarity and understanding, an ability to listen to each other. And we pray, Lord, that you will continue to bless this school as you have done for nearly 60 years now. We thank you for the history that we have and the way you have been working through this school. And our desire, Lord, is to be faithful to you in this exercise of education. And so we pray for your guidance in that, in this evening and in all that we do. We ask this all for Jesus' sake. Amen. All right, I want to start off by giving sort of a, well, I have it on here as the bigger picture. Basically, talking a little bit about where our mindsets were as members of this school, as leaders in the school, as we got into this discussion. We actually considered showing you a short video clip. There's about a 10-minute video clip on YouTube, if you Google it, by a guy named Sir Ken Robinson, and he talks about how the paradigm for education is changing, that we need to make changes as we move into the 21st century, and we're well into the 21st century already. We decided in the end it wasn't a good idea to show that, simply because I think it's more important that we talk together as real live people. If you're interested, I can send you the link, or you can Google Sir Ken Robinson. You'll know you have the right clip if you see a guy with a squeaky marker starting it off and writing something on a chalkboard. But yeah, education is changing. One of the things is, and so these are discussions we've been having, and some of this has been going on for a while, and it gets renewed. But the whole idea of this factory model of education that we have, where we batch kids according to age level, fill them with knowledge and churn them out, that's very simplistic, I realize, is something that comes out of the industrialization, and it's not necessarily based on good pedagogy. I think we've done our best to develop pedagogy that fits that model, and we've worked hard at that, and there are good pedagogies out there. But the idea that kids should be grouped by age and that makes the best education is something that people are really starting to challenge. One of the things that, in fact, one person I was just reading today said it's really just based on an erroneous assumption about human development. One of the things that we've been talking a lot about too, and if you're familiar with the high school at all, you probably, and maybe the middle school too, but the high school in particular, this year they've been really focusing on project-based learning. And what that's really all about is getting away from the idea that we need to help kids take in knowledge, but teaching them how to learn, teaching them how to take information, and which is readily available to us. And how do you use that information? How do you think more deeply about topics rather than simply gathering information? And so thinking more deeply, creating projects that are open-ended, that allow students to really take the questions that they have and push them and explore them. And yeah, a lot about just learning how to learn and what to do with information that you get. And as a Christian school, I mean, that type of talk in education, if you think about the high school people that went down to High Tech High, I'm sure you've read about that. That's what that school is all about. If any school should be doing that kind of stuff, it seems to me it should be a Christian school. Because if we want to live up to our calling, we need to be thinking deeply about the stuff at age-appropriate levels, thinking deeply about what we're learning about, so that because our goal is to be transformed and to transform. So we want to develop education that gets kids thinking more deeply about the stuff that they're learning about. And along with that goes the other thing that we do more of is collaborative student learning, where we learn together. A lot less teacher talk, more student talk. Get them working together, get them solving problems together, get them asking questions, that sort of thing. So that's some of the directions that education is going, and if you've been watching the news or seeing the things about the BC Education Plan, those are the kinds of directions the BC Education Plan is also taking. One of the things we're really sort of looking forward to, and that'll come up later, is a revision of the learning outcomes that we're supposed to be teaching at school. Because now, and as we were going through this process and looking at them more closely, we see in many ways how the learning outcomes, the way they're laid out so strictly, are in many ways very superficial and have been sort of adapted to fit what are sort of imaginary developmental levels. So what's interesting about that is, the other thing that has been on our minds is last October we had the Ministry of Education, we had an evaluation, our school did. And this is an evaluation that is done once every 6 years for independent schools. And the report had a couple of minor recommendations, but the gist of the report was, what you guys are doing at Abbotsford Christian School is really ahead of the curve. You are going and leading in the direction that we see education going. And in fact, you have people here who could probably give workshops on how we should be doing education. And so that was in our mind. So I say those things to give you, hopefully, a bit of a sense of where thinking was at in terms of the people here at Abbotsford Christian School. So then, and I never mentioned this at the beginning, but it's pretty clear. We sort of gave you an outline that just has blank spaces on it, so just fill it in as you see fit. It's called active listening, I guess. So then, what brought us here? Well, a couple of months ago, we realized, and I'll be honest, that this is where this started. A couple of months ago, we realized, and in fact, we were thinking this earlier, but we realized that we simply cannot sustain the kinds of class sizes that we've been having for the last couple of years. It's great education, having smaller numbers, but it's just not sustainable. So we had to have that discussion, and so what are we going to do about that? So that's where the discussion started, and that's just reality. What happened was we started talking about that. I mean, we start talking about that at the admin level, and we sort of immediately went to the typical default of, well, we needed to reduce the class size at the primary level and at the intermediate level. And so with the numbers, we said, well, probably the default is it makes the most sense. We'll have 2 straight 2s, a 2-3, and 2 straight 3s. And the same thing at the 4-5 level, 2 4s, a 4-5, and straight 5s. And very quickly in that meeting, as we were talking about what that looks like and stuff, one of us said, and I think it was Karen, but anyways, one of us said, it was? Okay. One of us, Karen said, what if we did all 2 3s? Yeah, what if we did that? What would that look like? And so we said, well, that'd be different. And then we started thinking about the possibilities there. And that new idea started to really sort of resonate with us. And so we started talking about it. And some of the things we talked about is it is a way to meet diverse student talents. It is a way to, because you're looking at a class and saying, now we have a broader range of learners, and it's a way of sort of engaging that idea of we need to make the learning meaningful for the individual learners. Now, of course, that can be done in a straight grade class, but when you change the structure, it helps you to change practice. And so you get away from the idea of teaching to that imaginary middle, which is, we've tried really hard not to do that at ACES, but in a straight grade class, that's sort of where you start. You start thinking about teaching to that imaginary level, and then you try to meet the needs of the people at the edges. And we started thinking about, but this would make us look at learners in a different way. One of the things that we looked at was that in combination class, or in multi-graded learning classes, the students take more, we started to do the research on it, and students take more ownership of their learning. They rise to the challenge of, okay, now I have opportunities to develop my learning, and teachers become more of facilitators by setting up these projects, and students take the opportunity to take more ownership of their learning. The other thing that happens is there is more care for each other and responsibility for each other's learning. So you do set up situations where there's mentorship. I think what it starts to look like is more like a family, more like a group of people who are caring for each other. Because one of the things we said right off the bat is doing something like this is not about teaching to the 2s and teaching to the 3s. This is a group of learners together with diverse needs, and we are going to set up activities and curriculum in such a way that we meet the needs of those students, not based on age groupings. Students, one of the things we found, I'll just quote from something here. A lot of the research talks about things like students in these classrooms, in multi-age classrooms, have significantly more positive attitudes towards school, themselves, and others. Researchers generally agree that students in multi-grade classes tend to be higher or better than those in single-grade classes in the following effective areas: study habits, social interaction, self-motivation, cooperation, and attitudes towards school. Studies of academic achievement show that children from multi-grade classes perform just as well, generally, or better on achievement tests than those from a single grade setting. So we started looking at that. And then the other thing that we really looked at, and this resonated with us, was the social dynamics of it. In a multi-age class, students start to recognize that they don't need to see themselves as children at a particular age level. The children in their class and the children in the other classes are kids who have their own individuality, their own personalities, their own learning needs, their own learning strengths, and there is a sense of this isn't about grade 3 and grade 2. And one of the things that we really saw as potentially beneficial, and this would have to bear itself out, but out on the playground, one of the things that is the most difficult is a lot of the conflicts rise directly around that. Grade 3s and grade 2s, grade 4s and grade 5s. And they play games that way, and they set themselves against each other. And there's nothing wrong with games that are, that have teams and that sort of thing, obviously, but a lot of the conflicts arise when we're talking about, well, the grade 5s did that, the grade 4s did that, and the social dynamics of breaking down those walls we see as being really important. Because that's who we are as a school. We want to find as many ways as we can to break down the walls, break down anything that divides, that sets people apart, and that sort of thing. So that's where some of that discussion went. So where did we go? What we did was, obviously the first thing we do is we then bring the idea to the teachers. And so we did that in a couple of minor sort of get yourself thinking about this at a staff meeting where we didn't have time to discuss it, and then set up a couple of staff meetings where we could look at it really more in depth. And we did, at the staff meetings, we did what we call a SWOT analysis, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the staff were really honest about that. There are difficulties, there are challenges that come with this, but there were also a lot of strengths and opportunities that we saw. And some of those I mentioned, and some of those are going to come up in other presentations tonight. So there was definite some hesitancy among staff, but there was also some excitement. But as we looked at it, and as we were talking about that, we thought, okay, you know, if you're going to do something like this, you really need to do it well, and you can't rush it. And so we were starting to feel like, ooh, it's April, May, it's getting a little bit late to do something like this. And so we had sort of said, we need to get the discussion going. We need to keep this discussion going because we believe it's going in a good direction. And so we had sort of decided, especially at the admin level, that maybe what we should do is stick with the default for next year and really sort of develop this and do some professional development, have more meetings like this and that sort of thing. So that was sort of where we hit at one point. And then a few things happened in a very, very short period of time. One was, immediately after I made that announcement in the staff meeting, that's probably where we would go, I had a few teachers come up to me, because I said then who would be the teachers of the combination classes. I had a few teachers come up to me and say, really? We were kind of hoping we could do this as a collaborative thing, that we could work on this together, because you know that's going to work better, and Karen is going to talk more about the collaboration aspect of it. But and so teachers were coming to us and going, yeah, I don't know, we were kind of excited about this possibility. Could we still look at it some more? So that happened. Second thing that happened was we took it to the Education Advisory Team, which is a group of people that is made up of staff members from every campus, but also about 8 parents. And when we made the presentation at the Education Advisory Team, there was, by the time we were done and had discussed it, there was just overwhelming unanimous response saying, basically saying, go for it. We think this is a great idea, go for it. That happened. I happened to be in a conversation that same week with a teacher with a principal in a Christian school, in the Nanaimo Christian School, and we were talking about something else, and this came up, and he said, this is exactly what we're doing. We're doing 2 threes next year, intentionally. I thought, oh, so other people are thinking this way. And then, at the same time, I was in an email conversation with Joanne Den Boer over at the Society of Christian Schools in British Columbia, and that very week, she was down in a school in Denver that is basically connected with this guy named Stephen Levy, who sort of wrote the book on project-based learning, or one of the main books on project-based learning. And the school that sort of grew out of his thinking, or he's strongly connected with, very intentionally does. And interestingly enough, exactly what we were looking at. They intentionally do 2 threes, all 2 threes, and intentionally all 4 5s. And so I started thinking, man, there's a lot of this going on. And so, and particularly because of the excitement of the teachers that I'd talked to and the people at the Ed Advisory Team, I thought maybe this is worth pursuing a little bit more. And so we started putting the stuff together, and basically, partly over the principals conference a couple of weeks ago, which I can't go into that too much, but the speaker there also affirmed a lot of this, especially in the terms of pedagogy has to change. It's not about learning information and taking in information. It's about getting at, in other words, it's not a head thing, really. Education is about the gut. Education is about channeling your loves. And in a Christian school, focusing your loves on the kingdom of God. What does that look like? And what does that mean in all? And I could go on a bit about that, but I'm not going to. But it was interesting that that also happened at the same time. So those were the things that brought us to the point of sending out the letter last, I think it was last Tuesday. And what I'd like to do now is have Karen come up, and she's going to talk about, so how would this work? Why would this work at ACES? I guess the one thing I want to say in closing this session is, yes, this began with a discussion about numbers. It didn't stay there long, and ultimately, I can say unequivocally, whether I'm completely wrong in my thinking, I can say unequivocally, our desire here is to provide your children with the best education possible. This isn't a numbers issue. That's not what this is about. Karen.
All right, well, I prefer talking to your children than to you, so I'm going to be a little more nervous than I should be. But this is my first year at ACES, and I think that I have been most amazed at the staff that I work with. I think on the whole, we have a really amazing team of teachers. And if we didn't have amazing teachers, then this would not work. Because what we would end up doing is we would have 5 2-3 combination classes where we teach a bunch of grade 2s and stuff, then we teach a bunch of grade 3s and stuff, but we wouldn't be doing multi-aged learning. Instead, what I found, especially with the teachers on the grade 2-3 team, which I'm a part of, is that there's a real commitment to really changing the way that we learn at our school. And based on just seeing them work together and being part of a collaborative team and talking with them, it's really, really evident that the teachers on that team recognize that each child is an individual, but yet part of a body, and that as individuals, we have all different gifts, all different talents, and we can't just keep doing this one-size-fits-all approach where we kind of teach the middle of the road and we do a little extra challenge and we do a little extra review for where it's needed, but for the rest, this is kind of what we do. And by looking at the multi-age thing, we notice that there's really an opportunity to create more differentiated sorts of learning where we can really reach some of these students who are ready for a bit of a challenge, and we can reach some of these students who need a little bit more of a review, whereas maybe they're not ready to move into 3-digit numbers. They can stay in 2-digit numbers a little bit longer and learning the same sorts of skills, but at a level that's appropriate for where they're at with their learning. The other thing is that I've noticed is that learning is really not so much about the information anymore. In our grade 2 teaching team this year, we decided to teach a unit on Nicaragua and then to become partners with the school in Nicaragua and write letters to them and become kind of pen pal buddies, and hopefully when we're in grade 11 visit them and all this sorts of stuff. And as we were planning the unit, we said to each other, well, what are the goals of this? Like, what is our target? What do we want our students to get out of it? And it wasn't necessarily, well, Managua is the capital of Nicaragua, there's a bunch of really big lakes, there's some people that speak Spanish, and oh yeah, there's a volcano. Really, at the end of the unit, if the kids didn't remember that, it didn't really matter. What to us was much more important was, do they have a better understanding of what it means to be a global citizen? Do they have a better understanding of social justice, of understanding their responsibility to this world, rather than what are these facts? Because really, I mean, when they're in grade 5 and they want to remember those facts, they're not going to remember that we told them those facts. They'll just go and Google them. That's what I do most of the time now anyways, right? When there's some piece of information, I can find it anywhere. It's on TV, it's on my computer, it's on my iPad. But it's what do I do with that information that I have, and how do I discern what to do with that information? And I think that our teachers are really committed to moving into that direction where it's not just, here's a bucket full of stuff I'm going to make you learn this year, but more like, well, what are the topics that you're interested in? How can I help you learn that in a Christ-centered, student-focused sort of a way? And the other thing that I think is really important to why we can make this work at our school is because the administrative team has been really intentional about providing support for teachers. And part of that is not just having one class where it's going to be a split class, right? That's kind of turning into a bad word around here, to split up the kids and you do this and you do that. But instead to make a team effort out of it and to provide collaboration time where we have time as a team of 5 or 6 teachers to work together, to look at, you know, what is a unit that we can do together, what is something that we can work on skills with, and that collaboration, I think, is pretty key in what the administration is hoping and able to offer to providing multi-graded learning rather than just throwing a bunch of kids in a class. Also, I think that because we had such a good Ministry of Education evaluation, there's the opportunity where we seem to have a little bit of freedom to explore these new opportunities without feeling like we're restricted by learning outcomes from the Ministry of Education or staying inside the box of what education has always been like. And from what I've noticed, especially with Roy and Donna, is they're really committed to give it a try, see where that goes. How did this work? How did this not work? How can you change it to make it work without the fear of your bad teacher evaluation because this did not work when you did it. So that freedom, I think, is very important as well. Also, looking for professional development opportunities and providing resources for teachers. We're looking at getting some curriculum that's electronic rather than books so that they can be shared more across the different classrooms. So that's, I think, another way that we can really support the teachers. The other thing is I have been, and I think I said this a few minutes ago already, but this is the whole, I do better talking to students than to you, is the collaboration. And it's the ability to work together with other teachers on your team and even dividing up some of that workload and saying, okay, well, you know what, we have in math this strand or this group of things we have to learn that's about patterns and sequencing. How about we split up and you take some kids and you work on basic patterning and you take some students and you work on this and you kind of have different levels of abilities and for 2 weeks we'll twice a week meet in each other's rooms and we'll mix up all the kids so that you can really teach to those different needs and help them to really scaffold and improve their learning in a continuum rather than in just your classroom unit. The other thing is too that we found is that talking to the parent advisory board, we heard some comments from parents that when you have one class that's different than all the other ones, there tends to be that island where they do their own things and they're kind of unique on their own. And now we're all in this together. We're united in this. We're all committed to this, and we're creating this culture of student learning in community rather than each in their own class. Something else that I think is quite valuable is that our school, and being at other schools, I haven't seen this as much, has specific programs that are established, that have been here for a number of years, that have some of the same competencies that are required across the grades. So rather than having a math book that we bought that you teach this in grade 2 and this in grade 3 and this is grade 4. I know I keep mentioning math, but we have, for example, a writing curriculum that's called 6+1 writing traits, and it's not specific as in day 1 you teach this lesson, day 2 you teach this lesson, day 3 you teach this lesson, but it's much more broad as far as competencies of writing, such as making good word choice, or what are writing conventions, or what kind of voice do you use in writing. And the great thing with that is that when you're teaching a combination class with some students at a grade 2 level and some students at a grade 3 level and at all the levels at the end and in between that you run into as well, is that you can adapt that to what they're able to do and to what their skill level is at. Voice is something that you can teach in grade 5 as well as in grade 1, but the amount of work or the amount of concepts that you would introduce at that time would be different. And then also another thing that I've really valued at Abbotsford Christian is the support staff. We have amazing learning assistants, and they can really facilitate and support some of these activities that we're hoping to do in our classrooms next year, as well as our school has a teacher librarian. So that's somebody who's a qualified teacher as well as a librarian, and that's a wealth of information and resources, and somebody who can also work together with building some of these programs and developing some of this project-based learning that we're hoping to do. So with some of those pieces in place, I think that we're really well positioned to not just have a bunch of split classes, but really to create multi-graded classrooms where students can have their individual needs met in order to be able to be part of this body of Christians and students and human beings. So, yeah. Donna, it's all you.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about what subject areas could look like in a grade 2-3 combination class. And of course, it's sketchy. It's going to be, it's not going to be exactly like this, but just to maybe give you a picture of what it would look like. we hope that you come often next year to visit, and when you do come to visit, you won't see the grade 2s sitting at their desk doing their activity worksheet while the grade 3s are over in the corner learning something else. It's not going to be that way. As much as possible, it will be whole class, whole group learning, and then smaller groups, sometimes ability-based, sometimes randomly based, sometimes interest-based, also partners, sometimes within the same grade level, but sometimes an older student with a younger student working together, and of course individual work as well. So I went through the subject areas somewhat. Devotions, of course, is everybody all together, always. Bible, in fact, a few subject areas. Bible, theme, art, these can be taught on a rotating basis. So for example, next year in the 2-3 combinations, we will take our grade 3 CSI Bible curriculum and teach it to all the grade 2-3 students. And they will respond in whatever way, if it's a writing or a drawing or a memory or prayer or journal or whatever, they will respond at the level they are at. So it's not going to be grade 2 Bible over here and grade 3 Bible over here. It's not going to be that way. Math, Karen talked about it a little bit. I just took the number strand, for example, and I went through some of the outcomes that are in grade 2 and the outcomes that are in grade 3. The outcomes are basically the same, but in grade 2, you only have to learn to 100. All of a sudden in grade 3, you have to learn to 1,000. Well, if you know it to 100, you probably can do it to 1,000 because it's all patterning. So for some examples are represent and describe numbers to 100 in grade 2 or to 1,000 in grade 3. Compare and order numbers to 100 in grade 2 or 1,000 in grade 3. Estimate to 100 or 1,000. Demonstrate an understanding of addition and subtraction to 100. 1,000 in grade 3. And what's great about that is you can take students who maybe in grade 3 aren't ready to go to 1,000 and can work with other students who are still working to 100. You can take students in grade 2 who are already doing 1,000 to 10,000, and there are some, and they can work with the grade 3 students and beyond. So I could see it being almost a whole group lesson, say if you would do I don't know, a basic concept, whatever, a whole group lesson, and then the teacher would have activities. Maybe that would be kind of at, I don't know, 4 different levels, kind of. The children in the class who need the basic work yet. Maybe if the concept is something to, well, just for example, understanding of addition and subtraction to 100. Some kids are still going to be working on addition and subtraction to 20 and 30, and that might be grade 3 or grade 2. They can work together. Another group can be working on that group to 100, or the addition and subtraction to 100. Some will be working on the addition and subtraction to 1,000, and you know what? Some will be on the 10,000. They will be there. So again, it's kind of like Roy and Karen have said, instead of teaching to the middle road, it's providing the activities for the whole range of the class. Reading, like Karen said, we have kind of whole school programs, reading power. We talk about making connections when we read. We talk about asking questions when we read. We talk about inferring when we read. So we do that at grade 1, we do it at grade 2, we do it at grade 3. We've got hosts of books in our classrooms. There are books for everybody to read at their own levels. Writing is the same thing. When you're working on a trait, kids are working at their level. Maybe grade 2s are able to write typically 3, 4, 5 sentences. Grade 3s will write more, but you can bet there are going to be grade 2s who are going to be writing 3, 4, 5 pages. They can go with it. They can do it. Theme is another area that we will teach on a rotating basis. So next year, the topics from the ministry will be the grade 3 topics. And the following year will be the grade 2 topics. And the basics are in both grade levels. the earth science and the life science. They're in both grade levels. So whether they learn animals in grade 2 and plants in grade 3 or the other way around is not going to make any difference. They will still get all their outcomes and the stuff they need to know. Art is often tied into theme and can be done whole group all the time. Spelling, we use the Rebecca Sitton spelling program in grades 1 through 5. The program builds on kids learning words and memorizing words, but focuses especially on kids writing words in their daily writing correctly, not the spelling list at the end of the week. Again, whole classroom stuff can be taught, kids can be put into groups, they can go into centers, depending on maybe on their student abilities. Some kids might need to practice spelling short vowel sound words, other kids might be ready to practice, irregular vowels, whatever, long vowel patterns, whatever. A lot of the activities in the book are standard 1 to 5, so the kids already know, starting in grade 1, we do, the sorting words, and we do the add it, like you make a list of a whole bunch of words that start with B or that start with TH or whatever. So you can make centers out of those, and a lot of teachers have already done that. And then the last one I have here is our PE program, and of course, that includes games, individual and dual activities, dance, gymnastics, and alternative environment activities. Can all be done all together. So it will not be grade 2 over here, grade 3 over here. It will be a learning community where kids will learn that they're not just a member of the grade, but they are a member of this community and probably have a better opportunity to see each other with individual gifts and talents and needs, and the opportunity to help each other. We heard one speaker and I'll never forget this, we heard one speaker at a teachers convention who talked about, or asked the question, as a student, am I responsible for my neighbor's learning? Yeah, probably in a Christian environment, I am. And so the competition to, oh, he's reading better than I am, or whatever, dissolves a little bit, and maybe, how can I help Johnny in his reading, or how can I help Johnny understand this math problem? So that kind of thing, the community building kind of thing, I think will be really important, and it will come out.
I wanted to address, just before we get into a bit of a discussion time, wanted to address a couple of things that I know potentially are out there, and just based on comments that I've heard already. One is, the one question is if this really is as good as we think it is, and we believe it is, so why aren't we doing that at 4 or 5 level as well? And the basic answer to that is, the thing we heard from staff and from the Ed Advisory team was, one of the things we heard was, yeah, this is exciting, this is a good possibility. B, teachers need a lot of support to do this well. And we simply just felt that to try and give the support that we think it needs, and it might need all the way across the board, might simply just be spreading ourselves too thin. And so we wanted to be able to sort of use the 2-3 as a model, as a way of understanding it and working through the challenges, because change is a process, not an event, and it's not like everything is figured out at this moment and we know how it's going to go. But that's been the case with all of the things that we've done. When we introduced 6+1 writing traits, when we introduced reading power, when we introduced 10 highly effective 10 habits of highly effective math students, when we introduced our math program. We took a whole year for each one of those things, and we spent the year working through that. And so that's what next year is going to look like. How do we do this, and how do we work through it? So that's the answer to that, or that's the main thing there, and just in case that was one of the things that's out there. The other thing is, I know that there are people here who have been Googling this whole topic and finding different things. One of the things that you'll probably read, and it comes through in a lot of the literature, is that there's a pretty strong indication that the best multi-graded learning or multi-age learning environments depend on or are improved if a student stays with a teacher for more than 1 year. So that seems to be a pretty big thing in the literature. And I guess we just want to say we certainly see that as an opportunity and would want to take advantage of that opportunity. We also want to be flexible about that, recognizing that there may be times when that isn't the best thing. And so and that's one of those things we're going to have to figure out and work through as we go along. But I do know that is out there. And there's probably all other kinds of other things. And that's where we want to go now. And you'll notice on your paper it says friction points and things that we need to know to do this well. So that's the one thing on there. And the thing that I missed that I feel kind of silly about now, because I had I had quite a number of emails and discussions with people who said, we're excited about this. And so what I would like to also add to that section is celebrations and opportunities that you see. What are the things that you see about this that maybe we haven't even talked about, or the possibilities there? So what we would like you to do at this point is, and some of the tables are smaller than others, but what we'd like you to do is sort of at your table groups, and you may have to move tables around a bit, have a bit of a discussion at your table about what you see as the things that we need to make sure we think about. What are the questions that you have? What are these celebrations and opportunities that you see? And then maybe we'll give you a little bit of time to do that, and maybe appoint a spokesperson. Not that we want to shut anybody down. If there's people who want to talk, that's absolutely fine. But if we can appoint a spokesperson at your table, and that person can present some of the stuff to the group, it may just make things a little bit more expeditious. And then we'll go from there. Oh, and there's coffee and water at the back if you need to get up and stretch your legs. And then we'll give opportunity to share some of that stuff and see where this goes. I want to say, on the one hand, we haven't invited any of the teachers to speak this evening. I guess I want to make sure that the discussion is as good as it can be. And if you feel you could speak more freely, and this goes maybe in a way against who we are as a community, but if you feel you'd like to be without a teacher at your table, that's fine. If you want to ask a teacher to come, whatever. I just want to make sure that your discussion is as good as it can be. And we will not be offended. However, I mean, anyways, I'll leave it at that. So, take a few minutes to do that, talk together, and then we'll open up the floor.